Hey, this is the discussion version or the discussion video to Jujutsu Kaisen episode 17. If you haven't seen the reaction yet, check it out right here or in the description down below. The link is there. And I appreciate you coming here, right? Thank you for listening to my discussion. Let's get into episode 17, shall we? A lot of fighting this episode, and I couldn't be happier about it because Jujutsu Kaisen really, or Studio Mappa really shows that they know what they're doing oftentimes when it comes to these fighting scenes. They are greatly designed. I start out with the intro, that's never a good sign, but anyway. We do have this little moment where Maki's like, well, she's 4th grade, she's hopeless, she's never gonna get anywhere. And Miwa's like, oh, thank God, she's not a threat and whatever. But we find out later that the way she talks about Maki is actually coming from a very emotional place, right? A very personal place that has personal issues factored in, and that is the problem that colors her assessment or her judgment, her analysis of her sister to other people, which is, in my opinion, a real problem because in this specific instance especially, you are talking to your friends and teammates about somebody who could be a potential threat, and you're basically telling them that they're not a threat despite you knowing very well that they are, and you're doing that out of envy and jealousy. Somewhat justified, probably, right? But first of all, Maki doesn't deserve this, and second of all, Miwa doesn't deserve that either. Pure innocence, Miwa, holy shit. I absolutely love this. Shocked face, like, holy fucking shit, I'm in deep shit. And we do see how Maki is absolutely, I love how they make the the pole go behind her head instead of in front. They could have easily done it in front, right? And did some interesting, nice flip-floppy thing. They did it behind her, and then she uses it with momentum to actually go in here and get it started. And she comes in our face, which is like a very impressive thing to do. And now we have something that is, in my opinion, very poignant. We go in on the zoom in, very cool shot by the way, have a little camera flash on the pole, and then we do an actual 180, right? Like we're in a conversation and talking to one another. We do a 180, and this is her being thrown back in the moment that she basically meets the camera, right, with her thing. And we do have that sorry about that. We do have that explained a little bit here in terms of the dialogue, where she's like, well, she's using a longer weapon to close the distance, right? She has a longer range, that is her advantage and whatnot. And the way she moves, right, despite all of the trees and the twigs and everything here in the forest, she can move without a hitch, without a problem. She's quick on her feet and she's strong with every hit. That makes her so dangerous. And holy shit, look at this, the distortion in the faces, just to display how the expression changes over time, and how just the relation from the character to the camera changes, of her being thrown around and having to dodge and whatnot. It is really, really beautiful and gorgeous to look at. I could look at that for quite a while. She's only 4th grade, yeah. Look at that. 1, 2, 3. 3 whole things? Alright, interesting. How does that look in actual I'm going pretty close to 1. Alright, yeah. We stop at certain key frames, right? This is how we do it. We stop at certain keyframes. We smidge when we need to smidge, right? When the pole is in the direction. I love how the sword is literally in the at the camera, at the hilt of the camera, with like how we're playing with scope and how we're playing with sizes of things, right? And the relation in terms of distance. She comes in and she swings the pole around, right? We start to smidge with that, and we stop on this, right? As I just noticed. 1 with the movement, and 1, 2, 3. On 3, right? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. No, it's 2. Movement on 2. We realize here that something is going a little bit quicker than it did before, right? Almost like she's speeding up during it. She could easily defeat a second grade cursed spirit, right? And this is where we're landing at. She's constantly, again, this midget, she's constantly beating her back. And that's about it. And oh yeah, that was something I noticed, the hair flip, holy shit. The hair flip in the water, they had to do it, they had to do it. Wait. Boom. Alright, over here. I mean, she is beautiful. Making that arc, playing with the water. And then there was this shot, this insane shot of like the flowing water and them actually fighting in it. And but we're not focusing on the water. Was that in this? I think that was in this episode where we look at it and we're focusing on the feet. But first comes her curse technique, and we learn a little bit something about it even more, right? She has that auto reflex radius thing going on, which is really cool. Yeah, when it's activated, and she's actually putting cursed energy through the sword while it's in the hilt in order to accelerate it while it's coming out. And she's basically emulating the classic samurai quick draw, right? The classic in like old Japanese samurai movies that you do see, where you're like holding the hilt and you're waiting for your enemy to make the first move, and as soon as they make a movement, you're like, and you cut them before they can even make a proper move and end the fight like that, right? And then you have the sword, either you kind of wipe the blood off and put it back into the hilt, or you put it back into the hilt immediately. See, like if you ever played Ghost of Tsushima, right, for example, that's what they basically built the entire game around, like these old samurai movies with the quick draw technique and all of that. But it's really cool. It's really cool to play around with that. But Maki does something unexpected. She's like, you gotta think quick. You gotta think quick, right? Right? And she proves that because she never see the curses, right? And she never had these like curse techniques or whatever was going on. She was like, in terms of like a sorcerer, she's in 0 basically, or -2. She's very intelligent, but you know what I mean, right? She doesn't have that, doesn't have a smidge of talent, doesn't possess a single spell. And she has to use everything at her disposal, as you would if you're fighting actual people who are using magics, basically, right? Who use also long-range techniques and all of that. She breaks in, and Miwa's like, what the fuck is she doing? And this is cool. She throws it. She's like, bam, distract her, right? Her focus is on the object flying towards her. And she's obviously putting it away. Damn, right? But that movement obscured her vision, and the focus was on the weapon that was flying towards her. And maybe she even follows it as it trails along and doesn't notice the hidden weapon that was just thrown. And in addition to the hidden weapon, she's actually coming towards us. A very cool shot, by the way. The way the object flies, and it flies past the lens, and it gets revealed that this is like behind the curtain. Maki is actually coming towards us. And this is what she's doing. She's going in and attacking. And this is basically, I mean, right, change your enemy's focus of attention. And we do have this effect in psychology as well, right, which is weapon focus. Whenever a gun, for example, is in play in a scene, people will have a very hard time remembering the look of the person holding the gun, or people around and details around the situation and whatnot, because the focus is so hard, so vividly on the object that is very, very threatening, right? Life-threatening, that everything else is gone. And I guess in a way, this is what we have here, right? An object flies at you and it could kill you, so you're swiping it away. You're focusing only on the object and you're ignoring what else happens behind there, because the object is flying and you're focusing on the object. Meanwhile, Maki is actually throwing the next thing and then you switch it away, you realize at last second that there's another thing. You need to focus on it and focus on actually dodging or getting that away as well, and then you do not notice that Maki is moving towards you at this point in time. You have these amazing and crazy shots with the swords clashing, and you do love a sword fight, right? Fights are so amazing. And this is what I meant, right? The legs, and apparently her legs move. I didn't even peek that because her technique activated, right? So the energy was gone. But I love that we're actually underwater and we're seeing the feet moving, right? The footwork, which is also important in a fight. Yeah. And the most, like, holy shit, she's using Aikido, another technique, right? She adopted, she's like, I'm using every tool in the, right? Every tool in the shed, basically. And not only that, but me was like, wait, let me drop, what? Where is it? And she's like, nice sword you got there, nice sword. And this is when we break the tension, of course. And we go into another scene. We see we don't know much about Mei yet, so very curious. She's a more experienced one, supposedly. Who does she associate with? Kyoto School, Tokyo School, or none of them? And just like around in general, more like Nanami, maybe? I don't know. We'll have to see. We get explained what happens, because obviously we have an objective, but we keep ignoring it for fighting one another, but I didn't expect anything else. And then we're talking a little bit about perfection between Nobara and Nishimiya. Very cool, very interesting how we do have these two different perspectives, right? This clash of ideals. On the one hand, you do have somebody who is, I guess, identifying a lot with Mai in this case, empathizing a lot with her plight, with her sorrow, with all of the stuff that's going on for her, and saying like there's these high standards, and she's criticizing the people who have somewhat of a privilege, right? Indirectly Maki, but also in this case Nobara and all the other ones, and she's blatantly dismissing and ignoring the fact that they might very well also have a lot of curses going on, and we do know that for a fact because we followed the story of Yuji and Nobara and whatever. We know about Sayori-chan, we know about Yuji himself, right? And the shit he and Megumi went through with like Yuji basically dying and only getting back because Sukuna and whatnot. But they still don't see him as a human being, and they certainly don't see him as somebody who has been disadvantaged on behalf, or at the very least in terms like the politics of the schools and whatnot. And I think they need to actually, they need to keep that in mind, because that is a very important aspect. They would empathize a lot more with him because they empathize with people who have similar plights, who have similar issues and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, she's a bit distracted with it. That's not that important, right? It's important in the moment, in the fight, and it's cool information, but we do have that back and forth, that clash of ideologies more in this case. We do have some nice, neat animation when Nobara starts to just throw the nails, when she's making her serious statements. I didn't know Yuji left such a huge impression on her, actually. Like, we didn't get that much time between Nobara and Yuji, but he seemed to have left a really great impression on her. So this is, at the moment, it feels like best friends kind of deal, but could be more at some point in time, at the very least, right? I mean, obviously, could also just not be, and it doesn't have to be. I think best friends are always beautiful friendships. The trio, right? Nobara, Megumi, Yuji. I think they're a strong dynamic trio with possibly a lot of potential for really creating this feeling of, right, the little found family. And I do wish that for Yuji, who has been through so much, and for Nobara too, right, who's been through a lot with Sayori that she was looking up to, and Megumi, who has been through a lot with his deal that we don't quite know yet, right? Is your entire life just a job? Yeah, and we're going in. She's like, don't slight people, right? Because they have a couple of things that they maybe get an advantage on or have it nice. Because that was exactly what the problem with Sorori, because she was kind of nice, she did her thing and she was good at that, and she was beautiful, right? And she came from the city and people hated her for that, for no apparent reason other than being envious, being jealous of the supposed, not even in all the cases real advantages that she supposedly has over them, and how she must look down on them. Which is a similar assumption as what Nishimiya was making here. It's very easy and quick to dismiss people when we don't know what's going on inside of their lives, but you always have to think like the person being opposite of you, the person talking to you, maybe even the person shit-talking or trolling you online. Yeah, you don't know what's going on in their lives in other moments, right? You don't know, right? Or if a person is arguing with you, like having a serious argument and they have a serious disagreement, and they probably also have a lot of experience backing that up. That doesn't mean they need to be right? There's a lot of sample selection bias where we just pick out the things that we are like, that confirm our own opinions, and we even in our own experiences, right? When we perceive things, if we have a negative outset, we do tend to take in the negative more clearly, right? And then it accumulates. So it doesn't necessarily have to reflect reality, or at least shared reality, right? Because reality in a way is a subjective construction either way. But we don't know what's going on in people's lives, and it's important to sometimes just yeah, wait a moment and be like, okay, maybe I should be careful about that, right? Maybe I shouldn't talk too much about that. Actually, let me check something out, because yeah, okay, great. I mean, I need to cut that out, but it's fine. Yeah, Navarro strolled the dull techniques, and we have the hammer with a little bit of a comedic element. But Mai actually takes her out, and this is when we have the second big conflict of this show, kind of. We explain a little bit. I don't like the pacing of this scene. I don't know why. I think it's just, it feels shoehorned in. We would have to need, like, in my opinion, need to present this differently at a different time in a different way, because the information got across, right? And we learned more about Maki. And why she's as scary as she is, right? Her balance, her control, her techniques, her vast array of things that she has at her disposal that she can use. But I don't like how we just shoehorned this in between the conflict going off between Maki and Mai. Holy shit! I just realized she's still using Miva's plate. Holy fuck! Oh my god, I'm sorry, Viva. You're never gonna see that blade again. Cutting bullets, which is probably the coolest thing you can do in like a pseudo samurai-ish movie style. She's closing in the distance, she's using the trees for cover. We do have that, and she's like, I hate her because she's got all of that talent that I don't, which I am partially see, I also don't, right? Because Maki has all of these things going against her, and all of her talent, aside from maybe her being very, very strong, that's her talent, right? But all of the things that she's doing that puts her apart from all of the sorcerers she's been fighting against since we started seeing her in the show has been, or have been things that she herself acquired through hard training and willpower and adopting new techniques and being quick on her feet and thinking very, very much about this, strategizing very well and improvising as well. So I wouldn't consider that talent, I would consider that effort. We did have that discussion once upon a time, right in the beginning of Frieren with the, I think around episode 8 to 10, where we talked about effort versus talent and how you can mistake one for the other, because it's very easy to see a person who is very good at what they're doing and just assume, well, they're just talented and I'm never gonna reach that. The problem is, if I do have that mindset, I definitely never gonna reach that at all, because I'm not gonna be able to have the motivation to put in the effort and believe in myself and actually believe that there's something I can achieve. If I believe that I fail the moment I start, I might as well just stop, right? This is gonna hold you back a lot in terms of like mindset and everything. And it goes down to the most basic things. Sometimes you talk to people who have basic issues in life, be that in terms of like organizing themselves and applying themselves and whatnot. You see that a lot with people with ADHD or, I mean, autism is a little bit different, and there's just other connotations to it. Although, to be fair, like I've only recently learned around 30 to 80% of, I know that's a big range, but 30 to 80% of people who do have ADHD or who do have autism also are very likely to develop or already have a lot of traits of the other one. So there's a big overlap there. But yeah, people who have ADHD, they have that a lot, where they're like have real difficulty focusing on certain tasks or maybe organizing their lives and all of that stuff. And if you talk to these people, and a lot of them do have that mindset, I'm never gonna be able to do that. And if they have that mindset, right, you see the difference. People who develop the mindset to be like, yes, step for step, I'm actually gonna be able to do that, they will discover a lot of amazing things about themselves, right? Even me, myself, I don't have like ADHD, or at the very least, if I do have it, it's like a minor degree. Even I have over the years made the experience that there's a lot of things where I could not imagine that I could be doing them, or that I would be capable of doing them, learning them, achieving certain levels of skill, certain level of expertise in certain things, right? Even though I consider myself relatively intelligent, but I've made the experience that every time I take a step, every time I do make the effort, right? Every time I do actually maybe even sometimes risk something and go out there and put myself out there, every time that I discover new things about me and I do discover new, I acquire new skills, right? And discover that acquiring these skills is actually feasible and doable. And I think that this plays a lot into if you actually manage to achieve the goals that you strive for, is that you actually believe that they're achievable. And in Mai's case here, I do see a big problem in her just attributing not only the hateful emotions and all that, that's perfectly understandable, but they are a result of her associating everything that she sees about Maki with Maki's talent, rather than also just Maki's ingenuity, right? Her ability to adapt, her steadfastness, her willpower, right? Her motivation to actually get through that. And a lot of what she doesn't realize is actually that, at least that's what's shining through for me, on the emotional side, a lot of why Maki does the things that she does, in addition to just showing her family that have kind of been making life hard for her and her sister, is also because she feels really bad for her sister and how she's been treated, in addition to herself. And she does a lot of things for her sister, partially. So, I mean, even if she admittedly doesn't show it, doesn't always talk about it, doesn't put it into words, right? Doesn't sit down with her and talk about it, I do get the feeling of like twins across the years developing, and then being a little bit, or siblings being a little bit estranged, right? Growing apart, and now they have difficulty connecting because neither of them wants to really express themselves properly. So both of them are kind of focus a lot on the other one, and maybe also meaning well, at the very least, in Maki's case in the past, in Mai's case in the past, in Maki's case overall, but especially in the present. But both of them don't realize that the other one's meaning all that well, although I think Maki has more of like an idea about that. Yeah, all of this family stuff, talent and whatnot, and she can see them. She couldn't see them from the beginning. She's always been so fearless. This is a very interesting concept, because oftentimes if I know something exists, right, especially if I know something exists, that's the scary thing, because even sometimes if I don't know, but just maybe suspect something might exist that I can't observe, but that is here and that can influence me, that can harm me and whatever, I would be even more afraid, right? So this is very curious that Maki is like, I don't see it. It's like they're not there. This is an interesting philosophy. It's a resilient philosophy, right? She's putting herself out there. I mean, maybe it's dangerous to a degree because obviously she could be running headfirst into danger, but a lot of civilians don't see them either, right? See the curses or whatever. Yeah. So, and curses are in many cases affecting people on more of a general level and less of a I'm gonna kill you now level. It's more of, aside from like sentient curses like Mahito and whatever, but they're more existing on a level of my presence is actually making your life worse, which is the perfect metaphor for negative emotions, right? Negative effect and all of the bad things that come out of human emotions. I do love this design of her. It's almost even more hot than the one that she has right now, right? With the round glasses and the traditional kendo attire, and I do feel like this clan leader actually respects Maki to a degree, and he's like, I'll be putting you through the ringer, but I'll be looking forward to you trying to take over the clan. So I don't know what the relation is, but it seems to be the kind of like he's the master and he actually respects his student to a degree, but he's like, I'm gonna be hard on you because I know all the other ones are gonna be like, oh, this bitch. Never. I love these shots in like half the shadow on the eye and whatnot, and her completely in the shadows with the light behind her, and her then turning to the light, right, and walking towards the light, which is a symbolism, and one half of her, right, with the closed room kind of light shining through the quote unquote windows or walls kind of design. Really cool, really well drawn as well. And she says she's like, Maki has nothing to do with this. And this is the thing where I do feel like as well-meaning as Mai has nothing to do with this. As well-meaning as Maki actually is, I do think that she's doing Mai an injustice here. And that, in my opinion, that's on two levels. The first level is her being like, Mai has nothing to do with this, is not acknowledging that Mai experiences the same amount of blight, discrimination, right? People looking down upon her, maybe even more than Maki, because Maki has her like supernatural physical strength to contend with, and Mai has barely anything, right? Although we'll talk about her technique later and how I think it's heavily underrated. But yeah. I think she's doing her an injustice here because she's completely ignoring her subjective experience of this being terrible. Even though her statement of Mai has nothing to do with this is more of like, leave her out of this. I don't want her to, right, to have a bad experience or whatever. I think this is where this is coming from, and she's doing her an injustice with that. And she's also doing her an injustice with supposedly more or less fighting so Mai doesn't have to, because Mai always, and that's I think one thing Maki maybe doesn't fully understand, Mai always strive to be like Maki, because Maki was that person for her, that the older sister, right? The role model, the person never being afraid, the person taking your hand, telling you you'll always be together, this stuff. And obviously she grew up and wants to be like you, and if she sees that divide, if she sees that difference between the two of you, not only in how people perceive you and tell you, but also on how you yourself perceive it in terms of like power and all of these things. If you see that difference, it makes you really frustrated. And she's working really hard. Obviously, she is at the point where she is because of Maki in a way, because she did have that incredible drive and motivation to actually strive after her, become like her. But she does always constantly make that experience, that self-assessment, that what she is bringing, the development she is having, which she is undoubtedly having in my opinion, is not enough, right? And it is very frustrating to see that as much as you surprised people, as much as you actually developed incredibly well and were really clever and all of that, at the end of this episode, Maki still won. And this is reiterating, right, her misbelief about her own powerlessness, right, her hopelessness, her weakness, all of that. And this is also strengthening her negative emotion towards Maki, even though it's not deserved, obviously. And Maki is certainly a very, very nice person that doesn't deserve these negative emotions. 100% understandable why they're happening, because this is the most prominent person in her life, going ahead of her and always beating her in everything that she's doing. She wants to reach that level, and when she reached that level, Maki already reached the next one. And while that is very good for her personal development and driving her onwards, it's also accumulating frustration. And at some point, we will have that decision point where she either learns hopelessness, which is terrible, right? Learned hopelessness is terrible because you are at some point in a mindset that you believe that everything is hopeless and you cannot change your fate, right? In those specific things that you have the most issues with. Or maybe overall even, but in her case, the specific things, right, in Jujutsu sorcery and whatnot. Yeah, or we will make that decision point where she realizes how strong she has become. She separates herself from the image she has of herself from the image she has of her sister. She doesn't hold herself to her sister's standards, but to her own. And that would be a positive development, because while her sister helped her develop, at some point this could become a burden which she has to shed, and she has to step out of the shadows and realize her own identity that is not defined by her trying to beat her sister constantly or trying to rival her sister, but more by her complementing her sister and being talented and good and intelligent and clever in things other than her sister, and not trying to strike that direct comparison. That is the only way to get out of that, in my opinion. But yeah, oh, holy shit. This is an amazing fucking... Her creating the bullet out of the curse technique, and Maki surprised, not expecting that, right? And we're going in. And she's firing that bullet. Really beautiful. And we use like the CGI to kind of make that depth effect going. The problem is Maki is prepared for the unexpected, so Maki actually catches it. But this construction curse technique, let's talk about that for a second. I think this is heavily underrated. Like the way she's like construction using cursed energy and blah blah blah, and it's not reliant on her cursed energy. When her cursed energy is gone, the object is still there. That is the insane thing. She can create a bullet and it's taking a lot out of her, but she can create other things as well as she's going up the steps and becoming more powerful. And she's got decades to train and become more powerful. And I'm sure she's gonna make big leaps at some point in time, right? Like the progression of power, progression of strength, progression of technique, it's not linear. It goes sometimes it's this and then it's going back a bit, and then sometimes it's like that, right? And you make a huge jump and you actually win a lot because something clicks for you on a certain level. Conceptually, right? She could figure out a better way to conceptually actually use her technique, like Todo taught Yuji in the last episode, to actually figure out how to properly better use it so it doesn't consume as much power. Or she could just slowly raise her power level, obviously. And creating something out of nothing is a damn amazing technique, and it has so much creative potential, right? So I think she could be a really big player later on in the manga slash in the anime, if she really works on herself and actually gets some development. This is a heavily underrated. I don't even want to know what her domain expansion would be like, because as I understand it, she's actually using, or yeah, she has a cursed technique, right? We were under the assumption she didn't, but she actually does. So I would assume she could technically also probably reach a domain expansion. So that could be huge, right? Creation as your superpower? Holy shit. like underrated that everybody's, or everybody maybe except for him here, is like, well, kind of weak sauce. Like, dude, archaic, but she catches it and she's like, I hate this. Love the upside down, the upside down katana. And she was like, I didn't want to become that. You set those standards for me. If you stick that home, I wouldn't be suffering so much, right? I wouldn't be doubting myself so much. I wouldn't be feeling so powerless. You know what? Maybe she's right? Who am I to say she isn't? But maybe also you would have stuck around for a couple of years. People would have constantly said things about you like, she's useless, right? She's only there to whatever, to get the next heir going, right? The way that family is, I would assume so, right? I would assume that this is kind of the connotations that the talk in the behind her back that would be going on. And she could be miserable, right? She could be blaming herself and her sister for not pushing themselves on and actually trying to become something bigger and stick it to those people. And I do think that's, I think Maki's motivation here is actually twofold. One is, I'm gonna stick it to my family to actually show them that you don't need to see the curses, you don't need a fancy technique to actually become somebody really reliable, really strong, and really good in the space. And despite their conventional, traditional values, I'm gonna defy all of them, and I'm gonna become like the clan leader. And the second is, I'm gonna show them that my sister is not useless either, right? At the very least, I mean, she said leave Maki out of this, right? Basically, but leave Mai out of this, basically. But she also kind of, I think, she saw herself and my suffering and was like, this is not right, and I despise those people, so I'll do anything to defy them, basically. And her seeing her sister follow in her footsteps and doing somewhat the same thing is actually, in my opinion, probably very gratifying for her. But maybe maybe I'm not interpreting that correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. Unless it's a spoiler, in that case I don't want to know. So yeah. Yeah, that was Jujutsu Kaisen episode 17. A lot of character work done, really cool because I love Maki. I'm not the biggest fan of Mai, but she's nice, right? She's an interesting character. And it's cool to know more about them. And second of all, we got two really, really cool fights that had different connotations, right? We had the first one, which was like a classic, like head-on-head sword fight with like all the bells and whistles, and the second one is like gun versus sword, which is more like a fight on a conceptual level, on a strategy level, on a like a little bit curse technique level as well, right? Although Maki doesn't have them. And yeah, very cool episode, very enjoyable episode. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave me a like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. There's more to come. Check out my Patreon. Maybe the next episode of Jujutsu Kaisen is already on there. Might be something cool. Join the Discord. Check out the reaction if you haven't seen it. Link in the description. And I'll be seeing you next time.